Hello, and welcome to the Spiritual Solopreneur series. Today, my guest is Tamara Hawk. Tamara is a psychic medium and energy worker. She helps people realize their soul's purpose, align with their higher self, and connect with loved ones on the other side. Welcome, Tamara.
Hi, happy to be here, Bev.
Happy to have you. Tamara, my first question for you is, when did you first realize that there's more to life than what we can see and feel out here in the material world?
Probably when I was a little kid. I had what I thought were imaginary friends because everybody told me like that's what they called them, right? And there was three of them, Casper, Jake, and Sam, and they're still with me. So I guess they're not so imaginary.
I guess not.
Oh, but yeah, so it was when I was a little kid, right?
Okay,
But I didn't realize that it was different when I was a little kid, of course, right?
awesome.
Yeah.
And did you start seeing like dead people and stuff like that when you were a kid, or did any of that scare you?
Um, no, maybe when I was a teenager, because I guess when I first went to school, like grade one, two, three, like they kind of train it out of you, right? And they
Mm,
have you ignore all of that, right? So it was just less noticeable for a time, I guess. But when I was around 14, 15, in around there, um, my aunt had said to me, like, do a reading for me. And I was like, I can't do that, right? Like, because it had been shut down so much. And she encouraged me. So I did. And sure enough, like it just started flowing like crazy. Um, I was brought up Roman Catholic, so a lot of times when I would see things, I'd get quite scared because the fear of everything was put into me.
exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, I got over that eventually, but the programming is strong when you uh,
Yeah.
get that. But I don't remember being like super terrified of stuff, right? Like
What kind of a reading did you do for your aunt?
that was psychometry, which is because she wanted me to bring it back out because she knew that I had gifts and that I hadn't really been paying attention. So she gave me, I can't remember, a ring or a chain or something, and said, here, try this. And so I did. um, with the tool of psychometry. And then over the years, it's like I would have friends walk up to me in the pub or whatever, and they'd go to hand me something, and I'd get all the information before I even touched it. I'd get it while they were walking over to me. So, yeah, I
Uh,
don't.
Information about their people on the other side or about their lives or
Um, well, if somebody had an intention to ask me a question and they were going to walk over and hand me something to read, it was their intention for me to answer that question and I would start getting the answers, right?
ah,
But I would still hold whatever it was they had because I didn't want people to be scared of me.
right.
Well, really, like just knowing things about them or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. And for the most part, I try not to, I'm not nosy. Like I don't read random people, right? Like the ones that I could read were the ones that were coming over to hand me something. Like they were already open wanting an answer.
Right. They had the
Right.
intention.
Right. Like I don't walk around the neighborhood trying to read people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you walk around the neighborhood and see random things?
Um,
Like we're sitting here
Mostly,
talking. Would my could my grandmother show up here if she did, would you see her? And what's the etiquette? Would you tell me?
okay. So for the most part, I used to say, oh, I can turn it off. And then I realized I don't really turn it off. I more ignore it. Right. And Like a good example would be if you and I went to a grocery store in a car and I was going to run in and get something and come back, and you were waiting in the car. And I came back and you said, oh, who was in the grocery store? What were they wearing? What did they look like? And I'd be like, I don't know. There's all kinds of people in the store, right? I wasn't looking at them. It was just a crowd, right? And I kind of liken it to that. Like for the most part, it's like if I look, there's usually something there, but I'm not looking, right? Like it's hard to describe, but it's just another sense, right? So much like hearing, or, like lots of parents, their kids can be screaming, playing. They got 5 kids and they're making all kinds of noise. The parents don't hear it because they're so used to it, they tune it out. And I think that's just how I operate too, right? A few months ago, I was walking through the park and bumped into one of my neighbors that had lost her husband. And he did actually say some stuff to her through me. And I told her because she knew who I was, she knew what I did, right? I've been sitting in a dentist chair and the hygienist's brother came through. I didn't say anything, right? Like,
well, I mean, unless he has like an urgent message for her or something, or I
right?
don't know, like,
Like to me, it's intrusive to be reading other people, right? And it's like you probably have all kinds of dead people around you, but I'm paying no mind,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's all background noise until I look.
So the fact is, we're walking around here, and there are people around us, most likely.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Like it's if somebody comes to me for an appointment wanting to talk to dead people, there's always somebody there, right? Like
Yeah.
there's always somebody. Yeah. And
But even if we haven't come to you for a reading, we're just walking down the street, what's the probability that there are people around us that we can't see?
very,
Okay.
very
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, like the neighbor in the park where I gave her a message, I knew her. Like I knew that neighbor, right?
Yeah.
There's been times where I'm out for lunch with a friend and they have somebody come through. I would tell them they're my friend. They know who I am and what I do, right? So yeah,
Got it.
you wouldn't catch me walking into a coffee shop saying, "Hey, everybody."
Right. Walking up to a perfect stranger.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So when you are doing it intentionally, somebody comes to your office or you meet with someone to do a reading, do you have any sort of ritual, like Tyler Henry with the scribbles or anything like that, or they just come?
Um, yeah, I don't really have a ritual. I do kind of write stuff down. If it's a phone reading, when I go to sit and focus ahead of time, I start writing things down as it starts coming in. And then like before I phone the person. Um, most of the time for an in-person reading, I just kind of lean forward on my knees like this. And I close my eyes for a second and see what comes in. And then I just
Oh,
sharing.
wow. So how did these messages come through? Is it something you hear or feel or?
Okay. Interestingly enough, it comes through all ways. Sometimes I just know things, right? It's like if somebody were to say 2 + 2 and you blurt out 4 because you just know it. So sometimes it's like that, where I just know it.
Good analogy.
Yeah, like it's just you just automatically know it. Sometimes I get words like in my head. I actually like those because then I can just repeat them exactly, right?
No interpretation needed.
Exactly. No interpretation required. I just repeat the words I'm hearing, right? Sometimes I'll get feelings, right? Whether it's an emotional feeling or if there's a feeling in my body, right? Like somebody who died of a heart attack, maybe I'll be feeling something in my chest, or I can't breathe, or sometimes it's feelings. And yeah, like it's all different ways, and it's always kind of unique. Like people are like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know how I know, right? For me, it's just another sense, right? Like seeing with your eyes.
Yeah. So you talk about your peeps quite a bit. I know on your videos and on your website.
Yeah.
Tell us, who are your peeps?
Okay. Okay, so we all have helpers, friends, whatever around us. Okay. So the reason I say my peeps is because of my husband, my late husband, because I have, like say, I've got my guides, there's angels around, there's dead people around, there's my own connection to my higher self, right? And it's all energy. But my husband used to say to me, if he had a question about something, he'd say, just ask your peeps. And he said that all the time, right? He'd want to know something and he'd say, can you ask your peeps? And I thought, is that ever an easy way to say it? Right? So that's why it's my peeps, because it encompasses all of them, all of everything, right? Including my own higher self, or sometimes it's even the higher self of who I'm talking to. Like, yeah, like for my husband, if it was a question about him and it was his higher self, that was still kind of my peeps, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So your peeps they're all sorts of things. They're guides, they're higher self, they're guardian angels, they're all those things exist and speak in a way.
Yeah. And higher self and everything else too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's who the
Cool.
peeps are.
I wanted to also ask you, just on the sort of more business side of things, as business owners, we quite often have this sort of negative voice in our head that stops us from, it's a block of sorts. Um, even successful people have
Yeah.
it occasionally. What do you recommend for quietening that voice?
Okay. I got tons of those voices, by the way.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
We all do. Okay. There's a couple of things. Is you got to know yourself really, really well to know what's you. Okay. You've got to pay attention to what those thoughts are, like in a really big way. Like you need to be paying attention to what you're thinking most of the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you need to be consistently reframing things, right? So when I say that I've got lots of those, right? It's like we're programmed in the first 7 years of our life, right? That's all our downloads and subconscious and everything else, right? So, there's the being brought up Roman Catholic at the beginning of my life, right? There's the financial issues at the beginning of my life, right? Some stuff with my dad at the beginning of my life. So those things can stick in your head, right? Like you're programmed with them. But if you know that they're there, you reprogram yourself, right? What happens is when we get when we get under a lot of pressure, right? Um, we get into like our fight or flight mode, and our brain kind of shuts off. It's just fight or flight. So what we do is we react instead of, say, responding, but we react with that old programming from childhood, because it's instinctual, it's old reactions, right? So when you start to pay attention to who you are yourself and start paying attention to where your thoughts are going, then you can recognize when these old programs are coming up to the surface, right? And, you know, whether it's some old programs about money or worthiness or whatever, chances are they're a parent's words in your head or somebody else. They're not even your words in your head. You have to be able to pay attention and get quiet enough to figure out what words are there. And once you do that, like, you know, a lot of times people have stuff going through their head or coming out of their mouth, and they're like, yeah, but I don't really believe that. And it's like, then you need to kind of reprogram that way of thinking.
Yeah. So you don't have that running through your head.
Right. But the first thing is mindfulness and knowing it's there. Because when you're in fight or flight, you're not going to recognize that it's there. And you have to know it's there. Right. That's where readings come in handy too, because I can feel where you're vibing. Right. Like you could say all the most wonderful, positive things out of your mouth, but if you're vibing low, I feel that. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Like some of the most positive worded people are the most troubled inside. Right.
Yeah. I believe that. And so is it recognizing that this is happening, hearing yourself saying these things and understanding where it's coming from?
Yeah. Like, and you know, the best gauge is like, how do you feel?
Mm.
Right. Um, like I've had
If
anxiety or depression in like the past, right? Like, and there were times it would last for weeks, right? Now I may sometimes go to that spot, but most of the time it'll last for hours or something, right? Not a really long time, because with practice, you start to pay attention to like why, like what was your mind, your brain telling you that's getting you in that spot, right? I found that with depression, for example, it would last because I used to say, what's wrong with me? This is not like me. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And so when you're asking that question, your brain's going to give you 1,000 things that are wrong with you or your life. And then it would spiral for me. Right. So now I call it just like, say, getting in a funk or whatever. I sit and I'm like, okay, what have I been thinking of? Right? Like, what am I worried about? Things like that. And sometimes it's nothing. I'm just in a funk. And if that's the case, because that happens, like we can have great thoughts and still get in a funk. But if I'm in a funk, I just say, okay, well, this will pass. Maybe I need a nap. Maybe I need to listen to a good audio,
Yeah,
right? It will pass. And I swear it never lasts more than a few hours now. But that's like, say that's your thought and your programming again.
that's awesome. I have found if I get into that situation, if you know the old saying, it's always darkest before the dawn. I can be in a real funk state, but the next morning, if I can go to bed and get some sleep, or watch a little TV or something
Yeah.
to sort of calm things down, the next morning, I've often been quite amazed at how different everything can look.
Yeah, yeah.
Just by it's sort of like breaking the pattern or something, I guess, for
It
a
is.
little
It
bit.
is. It's kind of like shutting it down, right?
Yeah,
Whereas if you said to yourself, "Oh, here we go again. I'm going to be depressed for weeks now," you would be,
yeah. If
right?
I guess if I woke up the next morning and thought, I'm still depressed, damn it, then
Right.
I would be.
Yeah, like everything is energy, right?
Yeah,
All of our thoughts are energy. Like people who wonder how I do what I do, it's almost like all of this energy, like it's all here all the time, right? And it's available to all of us all the time. And it runs through us. We have our own, we have our collective energy, like it's all energy, right? And it's like somebody will say, "How did you know that?" And it's in the energy. I can feel it. Like I just know, right? Like it's I could feel the energy.
interesting. Do you have an opinion on how much of what I know that you're big on people taking responsibility, right, for there's decisions and trying to make the best decisions possible. Is there a component of it that is pre-planned, that is predetermined?
Sometimes,
Mm,
but stuff can be avoided too, right? We do pre-plan quite a few things, right? I wrote this blog post like 12 years ago or something, and
okay.
it was called How the Human Experience is Like a Vacation. Okay. And this is how I perceive it. Okay. Before we're born, we pick our parents, we pick our families. We may have, like with my late husband, him and I got together and said, "You know what? When you've got your shit together and I've got my shit together, we're going to get together because
Yeah.
we're going to do things together." And we did, right? Um, so that was kind of pre-planned in that way, right? In the case of my late husband, about a year before I actually met him, my peeps said to me, "He's here. You better do your healing." Right? So I went to a shaman, I did heart work energy, I worked on removing all my baggage because it was like my soulmate is here, right? And I could have ignored that. Okay. I could have completely ignored that. I had free will to completely ignore that. And but the thing is because of who he was, I know darn well if I hadn't done my hard work and I met him, I would have sent him packing because he wasn't my type. He wasn't my type until I was healed. And
Oh,
then he was. Okay. And coincidentally, the week that I heard he's here, get it together, he landed in Vancouver on a plane from New Brunswick that same week. So predestined, yeah. Could I have ignored it? And I probably would have still met him. Would we have done all we did together? I don't know, right?
right.
Um, but I look at it as with the analogy of the vacation, right? It's like if I wanted to go to somewhere on vacation overseas or whatever, I would book the flight. I may or may not book the hotel room before I got there. Or who knows, maybe
Gotcha.
I'd book a really, what I thought was a really nice hotel room. And then I would get there and I would go, "This place sucks." So I would cancel that one, get a different hotel. Okay. Um, or sightseeing trips, right? Once you get to your destination, you may want to change your mind on what it was you kind of planned because we do have that free will, right? Um,
Okay.
sometimes there's like bigger events, right, that are kind of destined to happen. And sometimes bad stuff just happens. Like there's like what we would consider to be bad stuff would just happen. But it's how you look at it more than what actually happened, right? Like there's probably people like that would hear this where really awful stuff happened at some point, but they are who they are because of that. And it actually helped them get to where they want to be.
Interesting. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, like when it, just as an example, when it comes up in readings, okay, where I see something coming up for somebody, okay, I have said to people before, okay, so this person is going to come in your life, right? And they're going to be bad news, right? They're going to be this, they're going to be that, they're going to screw you over, whatever, right? You have a choice to avoid that person. I don't say somebody's coming in and they're going to hurt you. I say somebody is coming in and giving them too much of your attention or hooking up with them or businessing with them will potentially create issues. So when you meet them,
Up to you.
walk the other way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Much like with my husband, when
Mm-hmm.
I had the choice to heal up and meet him or not heal up, and I probably never would have got together with him, right? So it's almost like forewarned is forearmed, right? What you do, what we have the free will to do what we want with it,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know, I've had clients who said, oh, you told me I should never date that guy, and I did, and I lost a bunch of money or whatever. And it's like, well, we came here for experiences, right?
Yeah.
Like we truly did. We like the vacation. We came here for experiences.
So it would have been an experience for that person either way, I suppose. If
Absolutely.
and maybe the predestined part of it was there's going to be an experience around this, or you and that person. It's up to you whether you wanted to be one way or the other, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Like you have a choice. You have a
Yeah.
choice what you're going to make of it.
Yeah.
I want to share something with you about basically talking to dead people a little bit or
Mhm.
whatever. When my husband was sick, right? There was actually one time, say, in this hospital room where there was so many dead people around him, I actually left because I was interfering with him connecting with people on the other side.
Oh.
A few days before he left, we were talking, and he never liked to see me cry, of course, when he was sick, but and he was in a wheelchair at this point, and I was talking to him, and he said to me, he goes, well, babe, he goes, this has been quite the trip, right? And he said, he goes, summer's over. He goes, I got to go home now. He goes, I have met the most wonderful people. I had such a good time. He goes, but summer's over. I got to go home now. And I was just bawling my eyes out. And my bawling my eyes out did not impact him because he was already like, he told me, right? He said, all my people are waiting for me. And I took that, like when he was young, they used to spend summers at a lake and the parents would come and go for work, but the kids were there all summer long. And it was so similar to like his telling what he told me, his analogy, whatever. But to him, it was real, right? Like
Yeah.
he was like, summer is over and I need to go home.
He
Like,
he had one foot over on the other side already
oh, he did for a couple weeks actually,
for a
but
couple weeks. Yeah.
I
Wow.
could go on and on a million
Yeah.
stories about experiences with that. But so that's a good analogy, like what's predestined
Is
or
is would you call
vacation.
that a, yeah, exactly. Would you call that a shared death experience? Did you actually share have you actually shared someone's death? Uh, Someone dying or like been there with the spirits and so on?
Um, Not at the moment of passing. Like I wasn't with him at the moment of his passing.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but because of the relationship he and I had, and because of who I was, he would share, like, a lot of people, when they're going through the death experience, they'll say, "Oh, grandma," or whatever, right? Well, the humans that are sitting around the bed don't get it, really.
Of course.
Okay. My husband would go into great detail of stuff because he knew I got it, right? Like I went in one time and he was talking about Diane. Well, Diane died like 8 years earlier, but yet he was telling me, and he was telling me about a woman playing cards in the room.
Oh my gosh.
But
That
he
is so
could,
cool.
because I wasn't horrified. Like I
Yeah.
would like, tell me more, or, how was your night? Visiting him in the hospital, and he's like, well, the people playing cards, and
Aw, that is so cool.
yeah,
That.
yeah. And anyway,
Oh. Did
I have
But
a
you didn't see them, did you? Or I guess you could have
well,
if
like
you
the
turned
like the
into it.
one time I actually left the room because there were so many.
Okay, so
Felt
you
like
did.
I was intruding
Right.
because that was their thing, right? They were
Yeah.
all gathered,
Yeah.
and here I was, this person in a body.
Well, they probably wouldn't have minded if you stayed,
No, it just
but for you, it was too
yeah,
much.
it was uncomfortable. I was
Yeah,
like,
I gotcha. I gotcha.
leave you guys to it.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is totally cool and really intriguing,
Yeah.
interesting. Um, you mentioned 3D before.
Mhm.
So here we are on 3D. I keep hearing about this 5D thing that's supposed to happen.
Right.
What is it? Am I supposed to do something about it?
Okay. Um, there's a few explanations, but for me, it's vibrational yet again. It's
Mm,
energetic yet again, right? I feel as if I'm in 5D most of the time, or much of the time, right? Um, Having a conversation with you in my physical body, you're cleaning my house. These are 3D things, right? Like we're there. Um, but it's a consciousness, right? And if you are fairly high vibrational, then that's where you get your 5D from. Like that's all love. That's all right. To me, it's more like bringing heaven on earth, right? Um,
mm.
yeah, like a fifth dimensional consciousness or energy. To me, you're less judgmental, right? You don't judge things, like, because like I mentioned earlier, things aren't necessarily always good or bad. You have to look from a much higher perspective, right? Something that can appear bad in a moment might actually be a positive thing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's no judgment on the other side, right?
right. And it's like if you could stay in your love and heart energy, then right there you're vibrating much, much higher, right?
Hmm.
Um,
So it's a higher vibration, is what you're saying.
yeah, like that's the way I perceive it, right? And same with like just even like the ability to kind of see and talk to dead people, right? You've got to be at a higher vibration than this, or you wouldn't be able to perceive it, right?
Right.
Like if you think about it, two-dimensional is like a flat surface, right? And then 3-dimensional, you've got stuff on it. And then 4th dimension, you add in time. And then 5th dimension, you kind of add in more space. And like, that's why sometimes it's really hard for me to describe the energy that I know or feel or whatever, right? Because we couldn't explain the 3rd dimension to a 2-dimensional being because there is no up in it.
There's no reference.
There's right. The 2nd dimension cannot see the 3rd dimension, and there are no words in a 2nd dimension to describe the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I can try and describe the 5th in terms of vibration and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
but 3-dimensional words can't describe it. So yeah, like there's no words in my 3rd dimension.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I've heard a number of people on YouTube and so on have had near-death experiences, for example.
Mhm.
So they go over there, and they all say the same thing. There are no words to describe. They cannot describe what it was like. The only thing they can come up with is love, and they feel like that just doesn't even, that's not even the half of it.
I agree because I've been there in meditations and whatnot.
Okay.
I didn't have to die to have that experience, right? And that all-encompassing love there's no description for it, none, right? Like we don't even have the reference for it here. But I do know collectively the vibration of the planet is raising, and it's the higher dimensions are more available to people now than they ever have been before. But once again, that's free will, that's choice. Do you want to think nice things?
Do you want it? Yeah, exactly.
Like even before when I was talking about you've got to practice, like you need to know where it is your thoughts are going. You need to know what you're vibrating, right? At first, that can seem like a heck of a lot of work at first, right? I mean, there's somebody close to me who says, you think too much. I don't want to think that much. And it's like, okay, like, is it thinking too much, or is it being willing to see what thoughts are already there?
Exactly. You can let your thoughts control the situation, or you can take control.
Right. And yes, it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
To start getting into mindfulness and paying attention and whatnot.
Yeah. So the 5D world is becoming more and more available to us, but again, it's, do you want to take advantage of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're just going to raise up collectively anyway. Like people keep waiting for the event or whatever. There's going to be an event. And it's like, I've been watching it unfold for at least 30 years now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's not new.
No, like people are like, or they'll judge other people like, oh, they got to wake up. And it's like, I could have done that in 1982 to people. Like, I'm very, very happy that some people have been awake since 2004, 2006, 2012, right? Because I feel these waves when they come in.
Okay.
Right? When there's a big wave, I feel it. Like back in
87, the harmonic convergence.
Right.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think the one I remember the most is in around February of 2006, because every reading I did for months, if not years after that, I'd be talking to somebody and I'd go, oh, your life completely changed last February. Your life, and it was like, Oh, that's why. Like, that was the first time it was really in my face
Okay.
that these shifts were starting to occur, right? And it's probably because that was the first big kind of collective shift after I quit my government job and started doing readings full time.
Mm.
So it was extra noticeable to me because, like I say, all these clients were coming and they all had a shift at the same time. And I was like, wow,
Interesting. Well,
right?
maybe you were guided to quit your job at that time so you could help them, because there were going to be all these extra people
Yeah,
going through the shift, and they
maybe.
they were going to need help, right?
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Oh,
But no, we keep having them,
mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe
It
the planet's gonna blow up. Right? Like, whatever. We're here for fun, man. We came here for the experience. There's not one of us that's gonna not die.
exactly.
We all are gonna.
Exactly. I mean, it's not like some of us are going somewhere and others of us are going somewhere else.
Right. Like, we're all going to the same place.
We're all going to the same place.
Yeah. So I yeah.
I mean, the point is this has been a gradual thing. It's been going on for forever.
Yeah.
This
And it's
raising.
almost like the waves are just getting bigger, right?
Gotcha.
Because the more people, the more collective energy there is with it, right?
Hmm.
Like, one horse has 1 horsepower, 2 horses have like 50 horsepower. So the more people wake up, the more powerful it gets.
Hmm. Okay. That makes total sense. I like that explanation. Tamara, I'm going to ask you for maybe you can ask your peeps or just yourself. What is you have a little final message for the viewers watching?
Okay. Just basically try and vibrate as high as you can. Okay. And that doesn't mean that you're perky, happy, positive all the time. Okay. It means that you vibrate the highest that you're able in that moment. Okay. So, couple of examples is when I spoke about depression earlier, right? That's pretty low vibration. But if you were able to say, you know what, I know this isn't going to last. I'll get over it. Like, in your case, I'll go to sleep. I'll do whatever. This will be over in a little bit. That's a high vibration. It's a higher vibration because you've gone into hopefulness or
Mhm.
optimism. Okay. Much higher than depression. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all vibrational. We create with our thoughts and our vibration together, right? Sometimes if you're in a bad situation, people will be really sad about it. Well, sometimes if they get mad and I'm not going to take it anymore mad, that's a higher vibration than the sadness of the victimhood, right?
Hmm.
And that's why I say you got to vibrate as high as you can in any given moment, right? We're not all going to be all 100% joy and love all the time. But by paying attention, we can actually just move up the vibrational scale a little bit, right?
That is such practical advice. I
Yeah,
love that.
because we can move down with our thoughts too.
Yeah. I mean, it's all relative. You're in a state of depression. Nobody expects you to suddenly, just change it to high. Just do what you can to get to the next level.
A little bit better. Exactly. And
Yeah.
then you just move up gradually, right?
Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome. I love that.
yeah. And to start, it's just popping in. People got to stop lying to themselves. Um,
Uh-oh.
apparently my peeps want people to hear this too,
Okay.
right? Is um I don't know who needs to hear this, is somebody though, somebody who's listening, is the fake it till you make it, right? we need to acknowledge where we are. Okay. So like when my husband was very ill, I acknowledged I was sad, for example. I didn't pretend like I was perky, happy, laughing, joking, right? Because then I would have been adding a "you're a big fat liar" right on top of it, right? Yeah, I'm being almost shown an example of somebody who's extremely, extremely sad inside. And they walk into a space and they're using all of these positive words, but they don't believe them. And it's like, try and replace that with words that you can actually believe. Because when you get that thing inside, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's incongruency.
Exactly.
Right? Where, I don't know, it's like if you think you look hideous and you look in the mirror and you say you're beautiful, everything in your subconscious brain and everything's going to be screaming, no, you're not, you're ugly. Okay. So it would be better to say, look in that mirror and say, you have that one little part of your iris in your eye that's such a nice color, right? And ignore all of that other stuff, right? So that at least you're not lying, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something that it's incongruent in your energy, and it's just
Gotcha. Yeah.
unhealthy somehow.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah, like,
You know?
well, what they're saying is that because it will block energy and it can make you physically ill to
Hmm.
block that energy. Okay. Like unexpressed grief can give you breathing, lung problems, things like that. So you have to acknowledge it, and then
Acknowledge it and call it something that you can believe at the time, and then it'll get better.
yeah, and then raise up your vibration as best you can.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, peeps. That was a really great message.
Oh.
Appreciate it.
Oh.
Tamara, where can people find out more about what the services you offer?
Lots of places, medias. TamaraHawk.com is the main one. That's where you can find out more about readings and coaching and things like that. At Tamara Hawk on YouTube. Psychic Tamara Hawk on Facebook. And then I've got like Insta, LinkedIn. You can find me on all those under Tamara Hawk too.
Okay. Well, it's not going to be hard to find you. That's for sure.
I've been around long enough.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated this conversation. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate it.
Oh, there's Doggy getting out of the crate. Okay. Bye for now.
Okay, bye.